about 45 million pounds of chips in a quarter. That equates to about 200 million pounds of potatoes, which is quite a few. What's interesting with M&T is they're a small town bank, and as we've grown, they've also grown with us. They've got the resources that you would need in order to go big, but they also have that friendly local community feel so that it makes it seem easier than it probably is.
Hello, welcome to Candidates Up Front. This series of interviews with candidates on the November 3rd general election ballot is brought to you by Berks Community Television and the League of Women Voters of Berks County. Both organizations are nonpartisan. That means we never support candidates nor political parties. But both organizations consider it their mission to provide voters with information about each election. I'm Judith Cranus, a member of the League. First, if you are not registered to vote, go to votespa.com to register. Votespa.com is in English and in Spanish. You have until October 19th to register, but the smart thing, do it now. If you do not want to stand in line on Election Day, apply for a mail-in ballot. Again, go to votespa.com. Do it now. And when your ballot arrives, make sure you have the information you need on the candidates to make your decision, and then mail it in right away. We help our Berks County Elections Office handle this election smoothly if we are timely. And if you choose to go to your polling place on Election Day, polls are open from 7 in the morning till 8 at night. This year, we will vote for Pennsylvania Attorney General, Auditor General, and Treasurer. We will also elect representatives to the U.S. Congress, to the Pennsylvania Senate, and to the Pennsylvania House of Representatives. The League and BCTV invited all but the statewide candidates to be interviewed. Some did not reply, some declined. Those who agreed will be asked the same questions in the same order with the same time limits as others running for the same office. These interviews will be available on BCTV's webpage and YouTube channel. If you watch the interviews of two completing candidates, you can compare their answers to make your decision on how you will vote. This interview is for Pennsylvania House of Representatives in the 187th District. I believe we have a map. There we go. This district is most of Reading and its northern, eastern, and western suburbs. State representatives serve a 2-year term in the state legislature in Harrisburg. They initiate legislation and vote to create laws. They pass the budget, including taxes and expenditures of the state. They offer help about state government to constituents of their districts. The salary for a state representative is $88,610 per year, plus benefits and expenses. The two candidates are Michael Blihar, a Democrat, and Gary Day, the Republican. This interview is with Mr. Blihar. He is the challenger. Welcome, Mr. Blihar.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Tell us, why do you want to be a state representative, and what are your qualifications for this job?
Yes, so I actually ran back in 2018, very late into the game, into the election, and I decided to run again in 2020 to pick up the momentum and to really fight for the people of this district. In 2020, I've seen and heard from Democrats, Republicans, and independents alike, and they all say the same things. For the last decade, there has been an ineffective leadership in the House, and their communities have been hard hit by COVID. We all know this. And so I'm running to bring about change, to fight for every single person, not just people in my party. I'm proud to say I serve on the Kutztown Borough Planning Commission, helping small businesses, focusing on infrastructure and the environment. I know what it takes to be a leader, and I know what it takes to get things done, and I am that type of person. I'm a unique candidate in the fact that I am young, but I have a lot to bring to the table, and a vote for me is a vote for change and a vote for progress.
What are the 3 most important things you want to accomplish if elected?
Yeah, so it's no denying the fact that COVID has impacted people across our district and throughout the Commonwealth. In the areas of healthcare, one of my top priorities will be to lower the cost of prescription drugs for seniors and those with disabilities. We need them now more than ever, and to establish a drug affordability board that will regularly review prices. I will also work to end gerrymandering once and for all so that a legislator cannot stay in office for longer than a decade, and so that the voters are actually choosing who they want, not the other way around. And the last thing that I want to do is I have worked in higher ed. I am a product of public education, and I know how important it is for students and young children to get the education they deserve. So I will give funding to childcare options, quality childcare. I will make sure that we have fair funding for our public schools and more funding for our higher education and technical programs.
What do you think about state management of COVID-19? And do you see a greater impact on minorities and women?
Yeah, so this entire process has been very interesting. We've all been impacted personally. I am someone who doesn't have health insurance. I am someone who had taken hours away from me at work. And so I know the struggles that small business owners and individuals throughout, families, children, schools, healthcare, has taken from this pandemic. I think the governor did everything he possibly could. Now, as someone who's running for office, I do believe that there was more that we could have did together from the local level all the way up to the highest levels of state government to really manage this crisis. And it's unfortunate that it has become politicized. The legislature just has exposed itself that it is not willing to create change. And our minorities and people and women have been impacted. You look at Black women, Hispanics, people of color, they have been impacted by COVID-19 at higher rates than anybody in this country. And we are just not addressing it. It just exposed issues in healthcare, issues that we need to fix, and we need to fix fast. And when I am elected, I am someone who will present a recovery plan that will help women and minorities, but everyone throughout our entire district and the Commonwealth.
There is currently no county health department in Berks County. Do we need one? And should this be paid for by state government?
I do believe we need one. I think if we had one in the first place that was established, the response to COVID could have been a lot better, a lot smoother. We could have engaged with nurses, local healthcare professionals, hospitals, local officials, even state representatives, and the governor to really create a coordinated effort within the county to do this. I think this should be funded by the state government in conjunction with some sort of funding from the county level, combined efforts. But we do need something in place like this. Pandemics can happen anywhere and anytime, and we need to be prepared for it.
What do you think are common sense gun controls the state should have in place?
Yeah, so I will say this time and time again as a candidate. I am for the Second Amendment. I am not for taking people's guns away, but I will always tell you there are certain people in our society that should not have access to guns. I was a sexual violence prevention advocate, and I used to work with women, men too, who were experiencing domestic violence from their partners. I even heard a story when I was at Kutztown University where a woman was coming back from the courthouse to get her PFA, and she was shot and killed in the parking lot by her partner. These are stories that we hear every single day across our Commonwealth, across the country. And people like that should not have access to guns. People who are a danger to themselves and others, people who have a history of criminal violence with weapons like guns, should not have access to them. I want everyone to be able to be safe. As a young person, I know how much this has impacted our communities. And so red flag laws and restrictions on individuals who should not have guns should be in place. This is just common sense.
As a legislator, what will your role be to reduce violence in our communities?
Yeah, so violence, ever since I was little, even in elementary school, and this kind of goes back to the gun laws question. I remember sitting in first grade and having gun drills. Now, as a young person, I could hardly understand why that was happening. We see violence across our country as well. Communities being impacted by this violence. And so as a lawmaker, I want to have those tough discussions with local officials, people who can make an impact in their local communities to end violence, things like community policing, things like bringing police and issues like Black Lives Matter to the table so we can actually discuss issues that are important to our community members. There's a lot that we can be doing, a lot to fund to change these issues, and that's what I will fight for as a lawmaker.
Following the census, our state legislators will withdraw district lines for state and federal officials. This has led to gerrymandering, districts that favor one party over others. Do you think this is fair to voters? And if not, what will you do to give voters fair districts?
Well, the simple answer is no, and I actually am running in a gerrymandered district. My opponent, Gary Day, was one of the individuals when elected who drew up the current lines, and he drew those lines knowing that he and his party will consistently win year after year after year. And you know what happens as a result of that? People are left behind. Your voices are not heard. And even those within his own party who think that he is listening to them, that is not the case. It just creates career politicians who continue to benefit themselves at your expense and your taxpayer dollars. We have a system where our politicians are choosing the voters and the voters are not choosing their elected officials. And so when I am elected, I will fight for a bill that Fair Districts PA has been advocating for that will create an independent citizens commission that will be tasked with redistricting. So we can no longer have people serving in office for decades and decades and not listening to the people of their district.
Small business is important to Berks County's economy. Will you favor additional state funds to help them survive the pandemic?
Yes, of course. I will tell you, as someone who lives in Kutztown, small businesses are a key pivotal role to our communities, and they are essential to what we do. You walk up and down Main Street in Kutztown and you see how much of an impact these small businesses have on our communities. And so what I will do as state legislator in the 187th is remove unnecessary tax barriers that prevent small businesses from really developing, hiring more people, raising their wages, and offering more services and products to our communities. I also want to make sure that we are expanding any type of grants that we can provide to them to get back on their feet. COVID has devastated our small businesses, and I will not allow, as a community leader, for our small businesses to go under. Places that we love, that we cherish so deeply, we have to help them, and we have to do everything we can to get them back on their feet.
What should be done to prevent evictions and address homelessness during the pandemic?
Yeah, so I actually worked at the YMCA last year, and one of the services that we provided in the Allentown YMCA was the warming shelter. And I got to work very closely with helping the homeless population in Allentown. And I know what kind of impact this has had. We are seeing people across the state losing their homes in the middle of a pandemic because they do not have the protections that they need and that are necessary. We need to have the eviction moratorium extended by the state legislature. If I was there, I would have voted to extend that. We need to do something during this pandemic. We cannot allow people to be on the streets. Families and children are on the streets. You can see it every single day. It's on the news. And so I think we should be doing more to prevent that. Things like lowering the property taxes. There are seniors who lose their home, their whole livelihoods that they built. Because they can't afford their property taxes. And I think that's just sad. We need to do something about it.
What is your plan to address crumbling infrastructure in the state?
Well, it is no surprise that if you drive around Pennsylvania and you see the infrastructure, especially around our district, leaving Kutztown out on 222, you'll see the infrastructure damage that has been caused by expansion of warehousing, environmental damage. All of that has changed a lot. I am a proponent of Governor Wolf's Restore Pennsylvania plan, which includes specifically focusing on infrastructure in our rural communities. Things like fixing roads, building bridges, fixing highways, addressing potholes. Those are all things that will benefit our communities and bring jobs that we need in our area. And so we have to do that. We talk about broadband all the time. We had students who are learning from home during this troubling time during the pandemic, and we don't have the infrastructure or the broadband in place to help them. So this is going to benefit our rural areas more than it is anywhere else in the state, and I really think we need to do that.
Will you support raising the minimum wage, and what should that wage be?
Yeah, so I also have been a proponent of raising the minimum wage. I am someone who knows firsthand a minimum wage does not cut it. I can barely afford my own expenses working a job that I do at a community college. And so I am supportive of raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, although that will be, under my plan, in increments over a 5-year period. I also want to make sure that once the minimum wage is increased, that the state legislature is consistently always looking at inflation and comparing it and adjusting as necessary in the future, so we do not have people falling behind any further within our Commonwealth. We have people all over the place who can't afford their basic necessities, and we need to provide them opportunities to afford their bills.
Agriculture accounts for about half of Berks County's economy, and our local farmers are adapting as much as possible to changes in the climate. Do you think the state should do more to address climate change to protect our agriculture?
Yes, so it is clear our farmers are the life and breath of our communities. You drive up and down the 187th all around, there are tons of farmers, and these are their livelihoods. They provide local crops, local sources for our economy to grow. They need to be supported, and COVID and climate change has only made it more difficult for them. The expansion of warehousing, the expansion of developments has changed the landscape in our infrastructure. We have massive amounts of flooding, and what ends up happening? Farmers are expected to pay the bills for the damages that happen to their farms, with the state not providing any dollars to them. And so what I will do is implement more grant funding, more funding focused towards helping our farmers keep their land, and also implementing common sense climate change rules that will help them. Farmers and the fight for climate change are an essential part of it, and I want to make sure they're part of those discussions moving forward.
Pennsylvania has passed bills to help root out rogue police. Would we be better off if we separated the crime-fighting functions of police from social service functions?
Yes, I do believe that for sure, that we should be separating crime functions from social service functions. I think we really need to look at our communities. The 187th is actually surrounded, Reading off to the west and Allentown off to the east. And we see how crime fighting functions have operated in those cities as well. And people commute back and forth. We need to really address this issue and bring our communities to the table. I would like to work with local leaders in each of our communities to sit down and have discussions about how can we separate these two and move forward.
Do you believe there is systemic racism in Pennsylvania? And if so, how will you help change it?
So after the death of George Floyd and the countless number of other individuals of color who have been killed by the police, and seeing the institutional racism firsthand, my entire career has been dedicated to fighting for people, regardless of race, gender, sexuality, disability, and I do believe there is. My partner is actually a person of color, and I have experienced racism firsthand anywhere we go. And so to change it, we have to change the laws. We need to implement policies that will uplift communities of color in the economy, in education, in healthcare. And it is going to take conversations and people at the table to get those things done. It's going to be changes in policing, focusing on diversity, focusing on having community discussions about what that looks like. And so that is, I do believe there is systemic racism. I think we need to address it. You know, there's no more talk. We need to take action.
Discrimination in housing against LGBTQ people is still legal in Pennsylvania. Should we have laws to stop this discrimination?
As an openly gay person, I know what it's like to experience firsthand discrimination because of my LGBT status. Me and my partner actually tried to find housing in Kutztown and were denied once we were found out that we were a couple. And this is not okay. You should, just because of who you are, you should not be discriminated against. And so when I am elected, I will pass a bill that will ban discrimination based on gender identity and sexual orientation in housing and public accommodations. We also need to do more to support this community. We need to re-implement our hate crimes bill that will charge hate crimes against LGBT folks. And so you can count on me to be an ally to you in the legislature as someone who is part of the community and someone who has experienced discrimination firsthand.
There are inequities in the funding of our public schools. Schools in rich areas thrive, schools in poor zip codes struggle. What will you do to provide every child in Pennsylvania a quality education?
I'm proud to say that I am the product of public education, from public school ever since I was young all the way to public colleges and universities. You look around the 187th district and we have amazing schools like Parkland, like Kutztown Area School District. But we also look off to Reading and Allentown, where the school districts, which I have personally visited, are not doing as well. And no matter where you live, no matter what your zip code is, every child deserves a chance and an equal opportunity for a better life and a better education. And so part of that is providing more state dollars to public education through a fair funding formula that does not look at zip code, that provides fair funding to all school districts to make sure we can get them back on track. And at the same time, with this fair funding formula, we can start relieving our property owners of their high property taxes. It's a win-win situation for property owners and for children across the district.
People never like taxes. yet they are necessary. In this time of increasing disparity between the incomes of the well-to-do and the poor, is a flat income tax, as we have in Pennsylvania, still appropriate? Please tell us why.
So a flat tax, if anybody knows about a flat tax rate really does help grow the economy. But unfortunately, we have seen those who have a lower income, people like myself, people across the district, suffer at the expense of those who have more to share. It's time to raise taxes on the wealthiest individuals throughout our Commonwealth that can begin providing more to our communities that we have. And I would say this should only ever be a temporary change. Pennsylvania is in a huge budgetary crisis. In order to overcome that, we need help from the people who can help our communities. I would like to return to a flat tax rate once the economy and the budget starts increasing over time, and that's obviously something that the legislature will have to consistently and continually look at as we move forward.
The next budget will be very tight because of the impact of COVID-19. Where will you cut, and what services do you feel are still essential?
Pennsylvania has one of the highest paid legislators in the nation. And they make tons of money every year while there's people and programs that we could be funding. I personally would like to see a tax cut in this, not a tax cut, a pay cut in the state legislature's pay. That is so much money that we could be providing towards healthcare, providing towards more education funding, relieving property taxes, helping our small businesses, and getting rid of tax barriers for them. I think we need to be providing to these services. Our job as a state legislator is to provide for our communities, not to benefit at their expense. And so my priority is to give them as much as we possibly can. And if there are places to cut where we need to cut in terms of pay for our state legislators, I will do that.
Do you believe the fracking industry has caused environmental damage? And if so, what dollar amount of fees or fines should be charged, and how should the monies be dispersed?
So fracking does have, and it's founded in data and science, fracking has negative impacts on the environment. And we not only just environmental impacts, but impacts on people of color especially, because these fracking industries tend to go through areas that decimate where people live. Right now, the fracking industry is taking tons of resources from Pennsylvania at the expense of our communities. And while they're destroying the environment and our infrastructure, they're not contributing back. So I would like to implement a fine or fee that will help give us back some money to our communities. Our oil is here, and I know these industries are not going to be leaving anytime soon. We do rely on this energy for the future, at least in the intermediate time. And so we need more money to help our communities.
Should Pennsylvania decrease the use of fossil fuels and carbon emissions? And if so, how? And what would be a reasonable time frame to do this?
As a young person, I know and I've started seeing the effects of climate change over time. I want a sustainable Earth, the Earth that God has given us, to last us for generations to come. And in order to do that, we need to start acting now. When I am elected, I am going to implement key policies that will start moving towards renewable energy while not keeping those workers who work in non-renewable energy sources behind. Because we talk a lot about jobs versus the environment. Why not have both? We can have people working and we can be protecting our environment and moving to renewable energy. So one of my priorities will be giving those in non-renewable energy sources first knack at training opportunities and jobs in the energy of the future. I think a reasonable time limit is we need to start moving to these things within the next 10 to 12 years. There has been data and science that came out. If we do not do something by then, it may be too late to change the course of climate change in our nation.
We do have a minute left. You may make a closing statement.
Yeah, so I want to thank everybody for listening today about the answers that I have. And please visit my website, www.voteblehard.com. I am running to represent every single person of this district. Yes, I may be the Democratic candidate, but I am also running to represent Republicans and independents alike. A vote for me is a vote for change, a vote for someone who will listen to you, and someone who will actually provide empathy, listen to your stories, hear you out. A vote for me in November is a vote for you, a future you can believe in. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blihar. And I will note for the audience that the spelling of his last name is Blichar, so that you can look that up online if you want more information. And I would encourage everyone to get more information on the candidates. They all have websites, they all have Facebook pages. There's lots of information that's been printed in the press. There are many ways to get the information you need to make up your mind how you want to vote. And that key to voting is votespa.com. That's where you can register. That's where you can apply for your mail-in ballot. Will track, if you apply for a mail-in ballot, it will tell you when that request got to our county elections office. The county elections office will tell you you've received it. The county elections office tells you when they've mailed it to you, so you know to be watching it in the mail. And when you finish it, you've made your decision, and you mail that ballot back in, county election office tells you when they've received it, and then when they've certified indeed that you have signed it properly and it is your signature. And that is something important to remember. You're putting your ballot inside a plain envelope. It's called a security envelope. And then there's a bigger envelope on the outside, and that's the one you sign. Just like when you go to the polls, you sign your name and they make sure the signature looks like the one that you registered with. That same thing happens with the mail-in ballot. You sign the envelope. When they get that at the County Services Center, they check indeed that it is your signature. So everything will work smoothly if we all do our part, get our information, vote promptly, or vote on Election Day at your polling place. Votespa.com can tell you where your polling place is, just in case you have a question. But it will all work well if we do our part and are the responsible citizens we are supposed to be and get the information and get out to vote. So I think that wraps up what we have for today, and I thank you for watching Candidates Up Front.
We make about 45 million pounds of chips in a quarter. That equates to about 200 million pounds of potatoes, which is quite a few. What's interesting with M&T is they're a small town bank, and as we've grown, they've also grown with us. They've got the resources that you would need in order to go big, but they also have that friendly local community feel so that it makes it seem easier than it probably is.